Hey guys, what's up? My name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel, The Reading Otter 7. So today I'm going to be doing my top 10 books of the year. There's actually 12 books that I'm going to talk about. That's because they're series, so I couldn't really pick between the books in the series, so I'm going to talk about both of them. So there's technically 12. I only have 10 to show you though because I don't have two of them right now. Actually I only have 9 to show you because one of them was an audiobook, so... Anyway, but these are in no particular order because that would make it even harder, and I had a hard enough time picking 10-ish books that were my favorite anyway, so yeah. We're just gonna jump right into it. So the first ones that I'm gonna talk about I don't actually have copies of right now. I own one of them and the other one I borrowed, and right now the same person that I borrowed one from is borrowing mine. It's gonna sound very backwards, but that is Whiskey, Words, and a Shovel, Volume 1 and Volume 2 by R.H. Sin. These are poetry books. I actually read them out of order. I read the second one first because my friend Lindsay let me borrow it, and then I bought the first one and read that one. So she has the first one right now. I have no clue when I'm gonna get it back because she's really bad about reading them, but that's okay. So anyway, these were not the first poetry books I'd read, but they were like the second author of poetry that I'd fallen in love with, so they had a really big impact for me, and I tabbed the heck out of them. I usually tab poetry books, like if I like a particular poem, I tab it, and I went through like 2 packs of tabs on one of them, so that says a lot. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. This was one of the first books I read this year, and it has stuck with me throughout the year. I've read a lot of memoirs this year. That was kind of something I wanted to do, but this one has stood out to me, and one of my signs just fell, but it's okay. But this one has stood out to me throughout the year. I had the audiobook of this first, and I loved listening to her narration. She just brought so much life to her book. That's one of my favorite things about memoirs, is usually they're read by... my voice is doing weird things. Usually they're read by the author that writes them, which just makes it even more fun. I loved looking at From Gilmore Girls to Gilmore Girls and everything in between with her, and it was a lot of fun, so definitely one of my favorite books of the year. You should check it out. And I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, by the way. I'm pretty sure all these are 5-star reads. The next one that I'm going to talk about is the first Rick Riordan book on this list, but there are 2, and that is The Trials of Apollo by Rick Riordan. This is book 1, The Hidden Oracle. This is the first book in his new series revolving around the god Apollo, who has been sent to Earth as a teenage boy, and it's kind of like him trying to get back to Olympus and having to deal with all this stuff to get back to Olympus. This was a lot of fun. I love Apollo's narration, and just like getting to dive into one of my favorite Greek gods as a teenager was really fun, so I super enjoyed this book. And I cannot wait to read the second one, which I got for Christmas, so. Next I'm going to talk about Bloodline by Claudia Gray. This is a Star Wars novel, and it takes place in the years leading up to The Force Awakens, so it's in the new canon. And this is all about Leia and her time as a senator in the New Galactic Senate that is built after the fall of the Empire. And kind of like how it starts to corrupt itself and what leads to the creation of the First Order. This was super exciting to read. It's very political, so there is that, so it's not for everybody, but I had the audiobook of this and it made it really fun. The narrator did an amazing job. I wish I could remember who it was, but I can't. But it was a really awesome narration, and definitely would recommend if you're interested in kind of like what happened between episode 6 and episode 7. Next one is the other Rick Riordan book on this countdown, and that is Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, Book 2, The Hammer of Thor. This was an awesome continuation to the series for me. I really love the introduction of the new characters. I can't say a whole lot because it would spoil if you haven't read the first one, but this is quickly becoming one of my favorite series by him, and I love the Percy Jackson series, so that is hard to do, but it may be edging the Percy Jackson series out because it's really fun. Magnus Chase just has such great humor, so I really enjoyed it. One is The Princess Saves Herself, and this one by Amanda Lovelace. This was the first poetry book that I read, and I really enjoyed it. I tabbed it a lot, as you can see. It hasn't necessarily stuck with me as much as the other ones because I read them more recently, so I'm kind of like forgetting a lot that happens in this one, but I still really enjoy this book, and I definitely recommend it to anyone who's interested in getting started in poetry. Next one, I feel like if you've watched my channel recently, it should not be a surprise to you, but it might be. This one I got a lot of grief because I didn't want to read it for a while, and my sister was like, you need to read it. And then I read it and loved it. So that is My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. This is a historical fantasy, as we like to call it in this apartment, because it is based on historical, like, things that happened in historical time periods, but they twist it a lot, and add, like, some magic into it, which is a lot of fun. This is a really cute romance as well, but it's not, like, the focal point of the story, necessarily. I mean, it's a major plot point, but there are other things going on, which is kind of nice. I really like when authors do love stories, but they're not, like, in your face and the only thing you can read about. So that was really enjoyable. And there's just a lot of really great humor in this book. So if you're looking for a fun, humorous take on the Lady Jane Grey, I would definitely recommend. And there's a second one coming out next year that I'm super excited about, which is My Plain Jane, and it's gonna be amazing. It's about Jane Eyre. So these next two are another one of the ones that make this countdown 12, and that is, and I mean, like, I can't pick between these two, so they have to be on here. And that is Illuminae and Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. These are really heavy books to hold like this, by the way. I'm surprised I can do this. These are sci-fi books. If you don't know what the series is, like, where have you been in YA recently? But just for those of us who haven't been around, I'll tell you a little bit about them. But they're set in space and not really in, like, a world that we know necessarily. It's like a different galaxy almost. Probably is. But these take place in space on certain ships, or like this one's on a space station. And they're told in multimedia format, and they're just a lot of fun, and they suck you in and, like, really make you be invested in the characters really fast, which I wasn't expecting, because it's told in multimedia format. I was like, I'm not gonna get attached to anybody, but you really do. So if you haven't read the series, you definitely need to. The third and final one, I believe, is coming out next year, and I'm super excited about it. I can't wait. So these were both 5 out of 5 stars for me. The next one is actually an ARC that I read this year, and that is Brightly Burning by Alexa Dawn. This will come out in May of next year. This is a sci-fi retelling of Jane Eyre, so it's set in space. And basically, several years ago, Earth became uninhabitable, so everybody took to the skies and have been living in these ships, but a lot of the ships are being decommissioned. They're just old, they're running on fumes, and so they're starting to look into going back to Earth. But our main character leaves the ship that she's on and goes to a private ship to be a girl's, like, what's the word? Governess? Yes. And she kind of embarks on some adventures on that ship. A little bit of romance heats up, that kind of thing. It was really fun. I was expecting it to like it as much as I did, but I loved this book. And I flew through it, which is a lot for me because I generally just read contemporaries quickly. It usually takes me a while to read fantasy and that kind of thing. But I blew through this. And this is the only ARC I've ever read before the book has come out. So I'm kind of proud of myself for that. Anyway, this last one I don't have a copy of because I listened to the audiobook, and that is There's Someone Inside Your House? I thought it was Inside Your Room, but now that I'm looking at it, it's There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins. This is like a murder mystery YA kind of thing, and it takes place in Nebraska in the middle of nowhere, and these kids in the school just start mysteriously dying, and it's clearly murder, and so it's all about figuring out, you know, who did it and that kind of thing. And there was a surprising romance I wasn't expecting to happen that I actually, like, really was interested in. And I'm usually not, like, a huge romance person in real life, let's be real. But this book was amazing, totally captivating. The audiobook was great. I loved the narrator, so that was a lot of fun, and it just kind of, like, brought it to life on an extra level for me. So yeah, that's my top 10, actually 12 books that I read this year. So be sure to comment if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I'm always looking for new poetry authors, so if anybody knows any, like, drop them in the comments. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe for more awesome content, and I'll see you guys next time.